Let's talk about the literal black girl magic of Ellen Armstrong. My name is Nicole and I'm a magician and I want to celebrate the magic in you. Ellen Armstrong was a black woman magician who performed from like the 1920s to the 1960s, the majority of her life. She was one of the few black woman magicians that we've seen throughout history and the first black woman to have her own independent solo touring show. Ellen Armstrong was born in 1904, and she was born into the world of magic. Her father was J. Hartford Armstrong, who was a famous black magician at the time. He performed as Professor Armstrong. He often performed with his brother until he passed away. He then performed with Ellen's mother on stage. Ellen started performing with her family when she was about 6 years old. When her father passed away in 1939, Ellen inherited all of his magical props and decided to continue to perform in his honor. In fact, she also used his tagline, which was "Going Fine Since 1889, as her own. So you'll see that on a lot of her posters and promotional materials, even though she was born far after. Ellen would travel by herself or with her stepmother up and down the East Coast, performing her solo show in black churches and black schools for primarily black audiences. It's important to remember that at this time, the South was in the peak of the Jim Crow era, a time which states legalized racial discrimination and violence against black people. It was especially difficult for black people to travel during this time because these discriminatory laws could change region by region, and some areas were less sympathetic to black travelers than others. There were many sundown towns, or all-white communities, neighborhoods, and counties that would only allow black people to pass through their state or region during certain times, and usually have to be gone by the time the sun went down. This is why the Green Book was published in 1936, which quickly became the Bible of black travel by providing black travelers with a list of restaurants, gas stations, and lodging that would accommodate them when they were on the road. Performers like Ellen would find themselves performing in certain cities where they actually weren't able to spend the night, and so would have to travel in and travel out just to do their performance. Now, Ellen was lighter skinned, so she was traveling with a bit of privilege here. Nevertheless, you can only imagine how difficult it would be for her to travel with herself or with her stepmother in this really hostile environment. Now, Ellen Armstrong's performances were known to be very funny, incredibly entertaining, and skilled. She did a lot of magic around coins, like coin productions. She'd make coins move back and forth between her hands or make coins appear out of nowhere. She was also a great cartoonist, and she would draw people on stage or draw who people were remembering or thinking about, bringing them to life. The posters that she used to promote her events were so damn funny, and she wrote some of the best one-liners I've ever seen from any performer, especially a magician. Just so good. In his book, A Little Devil in America, Hanif Abdurraqib writes about the impact and the legacy of performers like Ellen Armstrong. He says, and I quote, "Magic relies on what a viewer is willing to see. And what a viewer is willing to see relies on what the world has afforded them to be witness to." Now let's think about for a second what it must have been like for black communities to be able to engage not just with a magician, but a woman magician, a black woman that's standing up in the front of a church making coins appear out of nowhere and completely redefining and recontextualizing the way in which that we should honor and celebrate black women and the contributions they make for their families and their communities. Today, the idea of black girl magic is shrouded in its own smoke and mirrors. We are often only celebrated when we achieve feats that seem near impossible, and those feats are made near impossible because of the racism, violence, and discrimination that we face in this society day in and day out. It's no surprise to me that there are so few black women like me in magic today because our society has done such a terrible job of truly honoring the inherent black girl magic that every black woman carries. I'm so grateful that we have stories like Ellen Armstrong to remind ourselves that we can make magic happen at the tips of our fingers no matter what we choose to do. Be sure to follow me if you want to hear more stories about black magicians throughout history, and let me know what you think in the comments.